Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about a sword that I got and how I got it and what I believe you should get as a mid-game to early late game weapon that you should have. So today I'm going to talk about the sword I got after the Raider X, because as an early game to early mid game player, you're using the Raider X over here, but eventually the Raider X doesn't do enough damage for some of the Slayers and things like that. So you need a better weapon. And at the time of me getting this video, I'm not going to be talking about any of the Dungeons weapons, as I believe Dungeons is its own separate thing. And I'm just going to be talking about the normal game weapons. So I'm going to tell you about a sword that, in my opinion, is the best sword to get if you want to be late game to early end game in Hypixel Skyblock. So, at this point in the game, you're tired of the Raider X, you want a better weapon. Okay, you have a couple of choices. You have the Aspect of Dragons, which is a rare drop from the Ender Dragon. Worth around, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 mil at the time of me getting the sword. It's probably worth less by now. And the Aspect of Dragons does basically similar amounts of damage to any of these other swords. You have the Pigman sword, which you get from the Pig collection. The only problem with this sword is it's very expensive. It's so expensive that it's almost not worth it, because it's only a slight damage increase from the Aspect of Dragons and the sword I'm about to talk to you about right now. So this third option you could get is something called a Tactician sword. And you basically get this sword from the Foraging Island. And the way this sword works is every combat collection you get to max tier, you gain 15 damage. So if you have none of the combat collections leveled up, this sword does not do a lot of damage. But if you have all 10 collections maxed, this sword will do 220 damage. Now 220 damage is pretty insane, as the Pigman sword's only 200 damage, and the Aspect of Dragons is very similar to that. Now these three swords that you have basically to choose from here are all very similar, and I count them as the same level. Even though some of them are a little bit more damage than the others, it's not noticeable. So any of these three weapons is a good choice for this point in the game. Now, why did I choose the Tacticians? Well, I did not want to spend the incredible amount of money grinding Ender Dragons to get the Aspect of Dragons. And also, the Aspect of Dragons is something that most of the players had and were using. Most people went from the Aspect of the End to the Aspect of the Dragons, or the Raider X to Aspect of the Dragons, and that's it. And, you know, how I like true progression and everything, I like to do things a little different. So I went for a more uncommon use sword, not known by much of the player base. And this is the Tactician sword. So I maxed out the combat collection, and then I bought the sword. And then the sword can be bought with 5 stacks of each enchanted type of wood. So 5 enchanted stacks of each type of wood. And me and my co-op got one, so that was actually 10 enchanted stacks of each type of wood that we had to work for. And basically what I did here is there's an upgrade you can put on this sword called the Thick Reforge. And basically that's the wood singularity that you put on there. That's what all the wood is for. You put that on there, you have 100 strength. So then you have 220 damage. You have 220 damage and 100 strength. Now, the reason why I have 220 damage, not just 200 damage, which is the same damage that the Pigman has, is because I have hot potato books that give me the 20 extra damage. But basically, this sword will give you the same amount of, around the same amount of damage that the Aspect of Dragons would give you, and the same amount of damage the Pigman sword would basically give you. So, in my opinion, I got this sword because it's the most unique and not used sword by the player base. It's a very cool sword to have, and it is less expensive than the Aspect of Dragons, and definitely less expensive than the Pigman sword. So if you're looking to upgrade from the Raider Axe, this is the best weapon to upgrade from your Raider Axe. And I'm just gonna, throughout this video, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna show you a little clip of me getting it back a couple months back when I actually got it. So anyway, this sword was kind of the first sword that I really put all the good enchants on. I really tried to make it a good sword. And ever since I got the sword a couple of months back, this is my main sword. It still is. Because if I wanted to upgrade my sword to the Pigman sword or the Aspect of Dragons, I definitely could do that. But they would do minimally more or minimally less damage than what I already do. Which makes there's no point in getting any of those swords unless I'm collecting them. And at the point I am in the game, I do not have the resources to just collect such expensive swords like that. So this sword has been my main sword ever since. I'm still using it to kill tier 4 slayers. I'm using it for dungeons. This is my dungeon sword. I mean, this sword is an amazing sword. Once you get this sword, you're pretty much good for the end game. Now, of course, later on, if you want to get super into the end game, there is the Midas, which is 50 mil to get, and everyone knows about the Midas, right? $50 million, very expensive sword. Slight damage increase from the tacticians. I'm gonna get it one day, but it's not worth the money right now for me anyways. And then there's the dungeon swords, but pretty much this is a high tier late game sword that will last you for a very, very long time. Longer than the Raider Axe, that's for sure. This will last you for a long time. And I mined a lot of wood for this, people. I mined a lot of wood for this. So guys, in total, for me to get this sword, the spicy thick tactician sword, I had to axe 307,200 wood manually. Put that in your minds. 307,200 wood manually. Most people would just buy the wood, right? But I didn't do that. I did it manually. And that's a lot of wood. That's a lot of wood. And then my co-op did it too. So in total, our co-op mined over 600k wood. That's just how it'd be. A lot of wood. It was a pain. Believe me. It took many, many hours. But once you grind out this sword, once you get all the wood and grind this sword out, it'll be your best friend forever. Now let's do a quick damage test with this sword. I'm going to grab my Raider Axe. So the Raider Axe is going to do 20,000 damage with my stats, 5,000 damage non-crit, 5,000 damage non-crit, 20,000, 5,000 damage non-crit, 5,000 damage non-crit, 20,000 damage, 20,000 damage, 20,000 damage. Okay. Now let's try my Specific Tactician Sword. 31,000, almost 32,000 damage. Almost 32,000 damage. 32,000 damage. And it basically crits 100% of the time. With this sword I'm able to get enough crit chance where I can crit everything. So this sword is a huge buff, people. This sword is a huge buff. Let me make sure my armor is... Okay, 33k. Because sometimes with this monster set, the set bonus does not do this. It doesn't do the set bonus until you reset it. Yeah, 31,000, almost 32,000. 32,000, 32,000. So yeah. Now if I wanted to go in the end, I have Ender Slayer on here, it'll do even more damage. Close to like 40k, most likely. So yeah guys, that is that. This sword is an amazing sword. With this sword I can kill any of the tier 3 slayers. And I even was able to take on a tier 4 Revenant and win. So yeah. See you guys. Get the sword. You gotta get the sword.